Hey guys, my name is Tim Murray. I'm a mod on the tarantula community, and we get a lot of questions about basic sling care, especially for first-time owners. I'm going to make a few videos. Not everyone's going to agree with everything I say. That's okay. I've only been in the hobby for just over a year. I have a lot left to learn. I do a lot of experimenting to kind of see what I like, and I try new things, and I'll show those in future videos. This video is just for the absolute beginner. It's to get you up and running. What's the bare minimum you need, and what's just a good way to do this. Not the only good way. The other thing I will say is I'm doing this on a phone. I have no intentions. I don't need follows. I'm not going to try to start a full channel. I don't even know where I'm going to host this video. Also, I think my daughter's waking up and she's sick, so I may have to pause and then come back. We're going to see if she falls back down. So anyway, this isn't my room is a mess right now, and I'm totally. Here you can see I've got some tarantulas and various enclosures there. But today we're going to talk about just like you get your first sling, you don't know anything. What do you want to do? So what I'm going to recommend is these little deli cups like this. One of the few places we actually have data for a lot of the stuff we do in the hobby is for these things. There is a, I don't know if it's an admin or a moderator on the Arachno boards, and I don't go there much, but he has hundreds of data points using these, and I think it's fairly robust, more so than most of the opinions we have in this hobby about husbandry. So I like to stick to it. You could use the same idea with one of these. I think they're cool. The problem is you get a little bit of dig space. So when you get these, everyone's going to say, you know, more substrate, more substrate. They need to burrow. But when they're really young, when they burrow, they're expecting to get other insects and stuff in the soil. And sometimes they don't come up very often. They grow slow. And what he found out was that if you put them in here without too much substrate, they can. I don't know why my phone keeps auto resetting. I don't know how to make videos, guys. Anyway, so basically, if you don't give them too much substrate and they're in a smaller enclosure like this, he found almost every single time that the slings he raised in these of the same species grew faster, and he had fewer deaths, and they seem less stress. That last part's subjective, but like death rate's not, and growing faster's not, and it was pretty conclusive. So I recommend using these and not too much substrate. Despite that not really being the hobby. So, or the hobby standard. So just quickly, here's a whole mess of stuff for different enclosures I'm making. This is, it's in my closet. It is the Zilla Jungle Mix. The reason I have this is because it's super cheap right now on Amazon. And my buddy, Aaron Cashel, told me it doesn't mold. So I've been using it. I use it kind of for everything. Probably shouldn't. I also have some topsoil, but it's in the hall, and I don't want to go get it because I've got a mess and she's waking up. So since I'm not actually putting a spider in here, we're just going to use this. If you have a big bucket, like a whole bag of this stuff, and you want to dampen it, and you're trying to sit here and do this, and it looks like you're getting it really damp, I'll just tell you right now that it's going to take a very long time. You're better off just pouring water in here and mixing it up. But I already did that on this little section. You do not have to get it sopping wet ever. This was a mistake I made a lot early on. You know, I watched Tom Rand's videos, which are way more in-depth and fantastic. I recommend them. There's 2-part sling care. I watched his videos, and even though he doesn't do this, somehow I ended up just like putting way too much moisture on the bottom layers and then the whole thing. I mean, you can see mine barely sticks together. That's fine. You do not have to like overwater these slings. They are good. You want to keep it damp for them, but I do let mine dry out. So let's start with poking holes in this thing. The easiest way to do this is just come through. You can see the little holes. I wish I had a white backdrop. Let's see if this will work. Pachow. There we go, people. Pachow. That didn't do shit. Can't see them at all. Okay, I am a master at my craft. Okay, you can see the holes in there, right? So I went through with a safety pin and just poked a shitload of holes in there. I like doing the rows like this. Entirely personal preference. Just put a shitload of holes in there. And then I went back with a 1/16 inch drill bit and just like made them uniform and a little bit larger. unless if you have a very small sling like a dwarf sling, just do the safety pin. But 1/16 was fine for whatever I had in here at the time. When you do the drill bit or the safety pin, quick tip, have the lid on. Otherwise, it's going to collapse on you while you're doing it. This gives it a little bit more sturdiness, makes it a little bit easier. The other thing I've never done, and I'm experimenting with, is I got this little hole punch. And anyway, you can just like come in here. I'm just going to make a hole. It's hard to hold the video into it, but boom, clicked it. Shit, it fell all over. Somewhere there's a bigger hole in there. Let's do another one. I thought I had some in there already, actually. Maybe it was on this one. Nope. Let's do it on this one. This one has no holes. It's a little bit more opaque. And kapow. Get off there. All right, now where'd you go? There we go. So you can see right there, you can see that nice clean hole. Now this hole's a little bit bigger. I measured it earlier, and it was like 3/64, so it's a little less than 1/8 of an inch. So you'd only want to do that if you're putting a little bit more sizable sling in there. But you can also like burn it with the soldering iron. You can use a Dremel with like a jeweler's drill bit to go through really quickly. There's all kinds of ways to make a hole. All that matters is you make a fucking hole, okay? And then I like to put holes in the lids too. Bam, I've got holes. I've got an enclosure. Really easy. I'll put some dirt in there. Oop, that's a lot of dirt. I don't super pack mine. I packed it a little bit. That's pretty dry right now because I didn't really wet it very much. So I'm going to just, you know, dampen it just slightly. I don't want to get this super wet. Just a few sprays in there. Pack that down a little bit. And then I'll add a little bit more. Let's see what that does. Okay, now, if nothing else, you could just put a piece of cork in here and make a starter burrow. If it's a terrestrial and you're good. I want to do a little bit more than that. What I like to do is make topography, because I'm weird. And so what I would do is maybe add a little bit more just on one side, like that. And then pack it. And then you'll see I've got like a little, well, it's not much of a hillside, but when I put this little tiny piece of cork, it doesn't have to be pretty at all. I'll set it in there. And then what I'm going to do is just come in with like a paintbrush or my finger or something and go shabba-dabba-dabba-dabba-dabba and make a hole. The shabba-dabbas are important. That's how you make a good hole. Just kind of squish it down. I didn't make a good hole. My shabba-dabba sucked, I guess. And then I like to put a little bit of dirt on top of that guy. Because, you know, why not? Let's make it more like a cave. Personal preference. That gives them a little bit more depth to burrow on one side, but not the other. And I like that because the idea here is you don't want them to do what my Tiabo did and completely bury itself at the bottom of a long vial, which is fine. And he lived, but man, he was slow getting out of that vial. You put him in like this. Like I said, there's like some pretty good evidence that it's healthier for them and they grow faster. So you've got this. You could really do very little else. You could put some leaf litter or sphagnum moss in there and call it good. I like to give them, I want them to feel secure, and I don't want them to have to hide in here either. I want to give them some options. So I get some like fake plants. This is going to be a bit big and a bit long, but you know what? I don't care. So I'm going to snip the bottom off so I can put that in there. If I need to, I can hot glue it, but I probably won't for the video. And then I'll put it over here. What I like to do is then have like a good leaf or something that kind of hangs out over the entrance to their burrow. I would have to work with this because it's sticking up a little bit. I don't like it. You know, I would squish it down. I'd probably hot glue some of the edges, but just to give them a little something. And then I would add some like leaf litter, just maybe like this. I don't do a lot of sphagnum moss, but it's totally fine to do sphagnum moss. You don't have to do leaf litter. You can buy leaf litter if you collect your own. Make sure it's somewhere that's not a yard or that has ever been hit with pesticides. But then I think that makes that look good. That gives them a little bit more. And then I've got some, this leaf litter came from a mountain in West Virginia where my parents live. And this is stuff that I bought. And so I'll put like one of these in here because that gives it a little bit more decoration. At this point, I mean, they're pretty good. They've got some texture, some hiding spots in there. They can hide under the leaves. They can web this stuff together a little bit. If they're a heavy webber, you can add a little bit more like small sticks or things sticking up if you want, or just a little bit more decor. And if you want to add a water cup, or a water dish, you can. I find that most of my slings just bury them. So I'll usually start with one in there. I don't like to start with it right at the burrow. I might put it up here and squish it in behind or something. Because if it's right at the burrow, they definitely get mad and think that jaguars are going to come and get their water and then eat them. So you don't want jaguars to get them. And I mean, that's pretty good. You can put your little guy in there. He's going to be good. You can, like, if you want to give it a little spray before you can, just make sure it's kind of like superficial, right? So like there's some drops of water in there. It's going to evaporate. That gives them a good drink. And then if you want, you can mist in there to give them some fluid. And you can also do like if it's a tropical species, I'll usually put like a hole on the side. Ah, son of a bitch. Well, that's because I'm one-handed. I'll poke a hole on the side with this guy. It's like a Tom Moran trick. And then that way, whenever I add water later, I use a water dropper like this. I'll put it in the dish, but if I want to add just a little bit to the bottom, because I like to keep a gradient, then it's easier to get it to flow down to the bottom instead of it pooling and running into their den. But a lot of that is not critical. If you have this, and you can keep it slightly damp or moist so that they have some moisture, and you feed them, and they've got good hiding spots, and you keep that lid on, and they've got air holes, you're good.